Hi, everyone. Kate Sargent here with Career Hacks and Snacks. Super excited about our guest today. We've got Trent Valladares, who is a fractional CMO currently, and one of my favorite people, and just way cooler than anybody else I know, pretty much. So, Trent, tell us a little bit about the work that you do and introduce yourself.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for having me, Kate. Really enjoy all of our conversations. Yeah, I'm a fractional CMO currently. I like to introduce myself as a CMO with an operator background. I have been in marketing slash entrepreneurship for 25 years and been on kind of all sides of the business from startups to $300 million companies. I generally fly in the consumer products, fashion, lifestyle spaces, started my own brand, built and sold it, and worked in corporate environments, kind of done the gamut of everything. And then a couple of years ago, made the transition to be fractional and I'm enjoying that ride.
Yeah, and you're liking it too, which is something that I feel like we bonded over because I didn't know that I was going to enjoy this sort of consulting fractional solopreneur journey. It's
Right.
exhausting and tiring. I love that you're enjoying it as well. So you have that sort of unique combination of a background too that, when I used to be in recruiting, people would ask for, which is, you've got the consulting, you've got kind of the in-house, and you have run your own business too. Tell me about how all of those things have kind of contributed to your ability to make the shift into this space.
I think it's been really useful because, especially as a fractional, most of the time you're coming into environments that are already set. They have some kind of definition to them and, often some very specific goals that they're trying to achieve. You're kind of coming in and taking over a team in a lot of places and you kind of have to hit the ground running. Yeah, I mean, I think that background as an entrepreneur always helps, right? Because from the marketing standpoint, you're able to have ideas and have visions and have strategies, but the operator side in me is super helpful and fractional because I can understand, well, is this going to work? How's it going to look down the customer journey? What's it going to look like on the margin side? Being able to bring like a little bit more than just the marketing focus, I think has been really helpful for me. And then the side of, working inside larger organizations gives me that experience of, sometimes there's some red tape, sometimes there's some hurdles to jump over, some politics to play
That
occasionally,
political savvy that you have to have in those big matrix orgs. Yes.
right. Every so often you got to play some politics.
I mean, I think you touched on something here too. You called it being an operator, but I think for me, it's bringing more value to the table than your job and your job title and what people are expecting in the consulting space. To me, that feels the difference between like a great or a good consultant is somebody who brings more to the table. Because I think there's a stigma on consultants too that we just like hang around and make money. And I think when you have a couple of extra skills and you can really have those discussions with different leaders and bring more to the table, I think that's the ideal scenario for a consultant. I've worked with terrible consultants. I've worked with terrible fractionals before. They don't understand the business. They're not really in it. They're very removed. And I think that's the difference between being sort of like an engaged embedded fractional versus a sort of outside freelance consultant. Do you get that sense too?
Yeah, 100%. I think you're dead on that. I mean, and in a roundabout way, that's what makes good consultants able to shine, right? Because many people have had experiences with the maybe less than stellar consultants. So coming in and being able to speak to multiple departments is very helpful. Where, I just had a thing that I did last week where I'm doing CMO stuff, but I understood that this particular company is trying to expand into the gift channel. And I'm like, let me work to connect you with some salespeople. Let's talk about how, independent sales agencies work. And so they're able to say, okay, wow, this marketing strategy or the branding vision that he's thinking down the line, and he's able to kind of tell me how this is going to help me to actually make some revenue, which in the end is what people are looking for us to bring, right?
I always joke like I was the head of CX while I was the head of people in one of the companies that I worked for. And it's wildly useful to me. I was in a company recently where I was coaching a CX team on how to build out their KPI functions, even though as a head of people, that's not necessarily in my job description. What an additional value to bring to the table for that side of it. So I want to talk a little bit about your journey because like you've gone through cycles of experience having, had your own company and worked in-house and then winding up in this fractional space. Tell me, how was it for you? Was it easy right away? Was it, like something that you really had to learn the skill of transitioning into that consulting space? Or what made your decision to kind of really dig into this space? Because I'm a big believer in parallel pathing,
Yeah.
both the like in-house option and the consulting. So how did you make a decision on where you decided to go next? next?
A lot had to do with timing, right? I mean, COVID changed a lot of things. That put me in a position where I was working remote 100% of the time, and that really never changed. I actually had started working remote the year before. That just kind of cemented it. And then just kind of life path, right? I mean, my kids were at an older stage in their education, and we made a physical move. We're in Arizona now. And so it was just kind of a time where I looked at what do I want to do here? And the more I thought about it, the more I realized, like, well, first I thought I wanted to just do creative. Then I was like, what ended up happening was that this whole operator background that we've talked about kicked in, and I found that I really wasn't able to just do creative. I really wanted to see how I could affect the business overall and how I could kind of have an impact. So the fractional piece really kind of came up with the move. I actually did some work with a boutique hotel firm, and that was like new for me. And, I was able to find out that my experience was super applicable. It was great. It was right in my wheelhouse, like super artsy.
That project is cool. You should tell people about that project a little bit.
That's called Hotel Congress here in Tucson, and it's like the oldest staple in Tucson. In fact, it's the number 2 Uber destination after the airport. It's one of those hotels that's like over 100 years old. The John Dillinger gang was captured there. They've got a ton of local art. They've got just all these stories, and then 3 music venues, so they're constantly booking bands. They've got a jazz club. They've got restaurants. So it was just a really cool thing to be able to see how, hey, your brand is missing the mark here. They were struggling after COVID. You've got so much to work with, and it just needed to really be packaged and tied into all the way down to like, well, are the shows making money? Like, why are they making? Let's kind of pitch this whole thing different. So that was kind of like a step towards this fractional thing, and I really enjoyed getting to work in a market that I wouldn't have been able to do as easily otherwise. That was great, and that's a huge piece of fractional. And so now I've been able to go forward and say, hey, I really can kind of have some fun with this.
One of the benefits of fractional and consulting work for those of us that have kind of worked in several companies and kind of experienced a little bit of everything, I think, is the ability to have somebody take a chance on you in an industry that you haven't necessarily worked in before because they're willing to, right? Or maybe they don't need a full-time CMO quite yet at their stage or where they currently are, or they need some sort of advisory capacity. But I think that's the unique part is people are willing to take a chance on new ideas and new things when the financial component of like just bringing you in and you being there forever is taken away. It's kind of like our ability to, date multiple people for a while until we decide we've really settled on the right person and, make that full commitment. So I think fractional is an interesting way to go for that. I have a lot of marketing clients right now. It feels like this last year has been a really tough year. What was your experience out there in the world of what people were looking for in the marketing space and things that either went well or didn't go well for you in conversations and what people were looking for?
There's a lot of marketing folks out there right now, maybe not as many homes as there needs to be for them. I found a couple of things. One was that there seemed to me to be a lot of double dipping, in a way, right? Where the company maybe was saying that they wanted a marketing director, but really they wanted a CMO. But
Yes.
you're kind of going to do all of that, and the pay maybe was commensurate more with the director. So there was a lot of this kind of, let's work towards something. And so I found a lot of that. The recruiter calls that I took were usually pretty interesting. I don't know how many people called me, and the position ended up either never being filled or they
Yes.
changed the position. They didn't know that they really wanted. I mean, sometimes you'd be, 5, 6 interviews deep. And then they're like, what? The client decided they actually want to hire whatever it is. And you're kind of going, wow, that was a lot of effort, not just on my part, but on their part to, develop this job description, go through all of this screening. And you're going, I mean, I guess, you would think you would kind of know, which.
Half the time people have no idea what it is they're hiring for. So it's so frustrating, right? Because like to your point on your end, it's really frustrating. But on the other end of recruiting for something and you give your all trying to find people and you have these incredible conversations and then having a role yanked out from under you and then you have to go be the face of it, and people are really tough on recruiters right now, which I get because there's a lot of nastiness out there. That's a tough situation. And to your point, it's a waste of time and it's also a waste of money. Whereas like if you think about how many hours I wasted on that, how many hours you wasted on that, if we just hired you as a fractional and paid for those hours, we'd already have a program in place too. Did you ever have any really bad conversations? Have you ever had any really bad interviews throughout the process where somebody asked asked you something either absolutely ridiculous or, you just knew right away it was not the right place for you?
I did have one, which was with a pretty big company. They were actually in, believe it or not, in the car and auto supply space, but they were working on building a brand. And the more, when I first got the call, I was like, yeah, this isn't, probably in my wheelhouse. But the more that I looked into it and I looked at the JD, I was like, this might be kind of fun. So, I got a couple of interviews deep, and then they had me speak with, I don't remember what her title was, but it was something in marketing. And as soon as I got on the phone, I realized like they don't really have a structure in this place, so I literally was asking her, so do I go to the CEO? Do I go to you? And they really didn't have an answer even for that. So that kind of set up some red flags. And that actually was one that I found out they never hired for that role. And so those are the types of things where it's like you feel like it might be okay. Then you get into a call, sometimes it's some very basic questions and you're just like, this is going to be a train
It's
wreck.
not for
So
me. I mean, I've ended interviews quickly. I think recruiters and hiring managers need to get better at that. Personally, that's one of my core beliefs of how we should run the system better. Say the thing, name the awkward thing. I've gotten better about doing that myself. I've been in the middle of conversations and interviews or pitches and just been like, let me stop you there. I really appreciate it. I think this is a wonderful conversation, but I don't believe that this is the right role for me right now. And I feel like we should train people how to do that through the interview process.
totally agree. I mean, I've had a couple of those. I'm working with this company, Puffin Drinkwear, right now, and we've been kind of building out a department. Same thing, transparency is the best in the hiring process. I was talking to someone for a coordinator role and they were great, but when you look at the resume, even though they applied for a certain job, you're like, what are you looking to make? Because I don't think this is going to pay what you're
Yeah.
looking to make. And they said, give me the number. And I'm like, look, to your point, you're great. I think this is awesome. I'm not going to waste your time. I don't want you to come in here and be like putting yourself in a bind, maybe financially. So,
Right.
stay in touch, but this probably isn't going to be the right fit for you.
Here's my take on that because you had a CMO title. Did you notice that it in any way handicapped you in some ways? Because I've gotten this question a lot recently. Because to your point, people get desperate sometimes too, right? Like they're applying for coordinator jobs when they really need to be a director because the market gets people into a desperate space these days. A lot of people are asking me how to down level themselves and get into these roles. And my advice has been very similar to kind of what you just said, which was no one's going to believe you for that role. They're not going to believe that you're going to stay in that role on top of that, like when the market rights itself. Did you experience any of that through the process or do you have friends who have? What's your take on it?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right on, and there's so many people that are out there. I guess there's so many positions available, although they seem to kind of swirl around a bit. I think the tendency is for folks, I do have some friends that were like, well, maybe I could kind of get in. And I think there's a time and a place for that, right? It probably depends on really what that delta is for you. A relatively reasonable amount of dollars that you're still functional on and you're not losing sleep over, and they'll talk to you.
And they'll talk to you. That's the key piece of it. They're willing to talk to you. Yep.
Right, right. Then, maybe you push it. But I think to your point, like when you're a CMO and you're talking about applying for a director role, like it's never going to work on a variety of levels. And there's just kind of a myriad of questions that come up with it. But I think what is great about that is getting back to the fractional standpoint. That's the great role for that, right? Because it is often a company that knows they probably do need a CEO or a CMO, but they can't afford a CMO. And so they're out hiring for a director. They're probably going to need to get an amazing director that just happens to have a lot of talent that's going to go somewhere one day, but they just happen to catch them on the rise. From a fractional standpoint, they can say, well, I can't afford you full time, but I could afford, 20 hours a week, 15 hours a week, whatever. But I have had clients in that space where I've been able to come in and make a quicker, more impactful, difference for them because I have that CMO breadth to be able to come in and do something for them they might not otherwise be able to afford.
I totally agree. And I feel like that's the alternative. Instead of going for these very low down level jobs, find yourself in a fractional space, correctly communicating your skill set, correctly understanding your offerings and offer that to people. And I also believe that people shouldn't just like accept a no in this situation too, right? Let's say you're a CMO talking about this director level role again, where it's much more of a director situation. This is the type of space where if somebody's like, nah, no, I just, you're too high level, blah, blah, blah. This is where you start offering that fractional space. That fractional piece of it too is where you get to sell yourself as an option for figuring it out. Like I think that's the benefit of the fractional space is, hey, you don't know exactly what you need quite yet, too, but you know that you need this, you know that you need this. Let me come in and figure out what you need. I think you can do really great micro engagements that way, too, where you can come in and sort of audit somebody's group. But don't accept the first no for an answer, right? Like if somebody says no, you're too high level, you'd be like, oh, great. Well, then you're lucky enough to be able to get me for 15
Right.
hours a week to come in, hire somebody junior underneath. And, between the two of us, you get the high level strategy and that doer in the space for pretty much the same price as you would have for a director. I got one more awkward question for you. So tell me
Okay.
about the worst piece of feedback that you've ever received and or like the worst thing that's ever happened to you in your career journey.
I did quite a lot of business with Apple. They have somewhat of a reputation of being tough to work with and,
I have
came out of,
heard and also worked at Apple. We
but
love Apple still. We love them
yeah,
anyway.
hey, I'm still an iPhone guy.
I've got like literally 4 Apple devices sitting in front of me right now.
I had a pretty bad crash and burn situation with a collaborative product. I got involved with someone that was pretty top in their industry, and all the conversations go well, and you kind of get down the road in product development, and then they kind of changed the direction. Stuff didn't get ready, for trade shows and things like that. They kind of have a meltdown. You're trying to bring your product team back together and say, like, where did this go off the rails? Ultimately becomes kind of, you're trying to pull a draw out of a loss, right? And you just kind of chalk it up.
But I mean,
Yeah.
how did it shape you? Did it change you, like in terms of the way that you work and how you collaborate?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's an important handoff. I'm often the guy that's putting the deal together or finding the partner or finding the collaborator, the artist, whatever. And then, the team needs to get involved in a big way. And so there's a lot of things that can fall through the cracks in that. You might, especially if you're dealing with kind of a very enigmatic artist or something like that, and they've got big ideas and big dreams, and then it gets to their team, and maybe their team can execute, maybe they can't. If you have any weaknesses on your team, they will be exposed in that kind of an environment, right?
Right.
Because
Again, a very diplomatic answer, a very marketing heavy answer. I'm just going to say it. I'm going to call it out right there. I think you're amazing. I love the work that you're doing. I love Puffin too. Like, what a cool company to have landed
really
at.
cool.
Your projects, your portfolio is such a cool group of things. So, and also you have like the coolest background of anybody in the world with the skateboards. Like, you just seem like somebody that people should like want to hang out with. Okay, so now we're going to shift awkwardly into snacks. Talk to me about your snacks. What snacks did you bring?
These are the things we get to have fun with, right? I mean,
I love it.
this is all the kind of new fractional mindset, new relationships. And so, yeah, I mean, I kind of have a couple of strata of snack.
There's like a tiering.
Right. Yeah. I've got like a whole
Wow.
pyramid. It's a whole, scheme over here. You just can't see it. My kind of go-to like energy kind of keep me going, eat a lot of payday. And the reason that I do that is because I can convince myself, it's not really a candy bar.
So
This
tell
is
me,
how I
why is
keep
it not a
going.
candy bar?
It's mostly peanuts. It's kind of like a trail bar, right? I
It's
mean,
not mostly peanuts, it's mostly sugar. But like I hear you and I feel like it's better than most.
what I brought to show you is
Yes.
these violet crumbles.
I don't know what that is. Tell me more.
So this is an Australian candy, which I didn't know, but I guess that maybe that's cool. It's like chocolate covered honeycomb. Their whole thing is it's the way that shatters that matters. When you get this thing here,
Okay, show me. It is a crunchy bar.
like real honeycomb in there. So
It's
it's
the
kind of like
honeycomb inside of it. Those are my favorite. I can't find them anywhere. They're in a yellow package.
they have a really cool texture to them. You bite in and that honeycomb is crunchy, but it also kind of dissolves. And there's so much air in it that again, it's not like a heavy snack. You can eat 3, 4, 5 of them,
So we're convincing ourselves also that these are healthy, similar
this
to
is how I live.
payday. This is working. This is
Yeah.
working for me. The marketing spin is real.
But yeah, I mean, I really enjoy those. Then locally, there's a company called Popped here in Tucson, and they make artisan popcorn. I don't eat it as much because it's like $10 for like a bag
Woo!
like this.
Are we like caramel and cheese
This
version?
is like prickly pear caramel, and they've got like
Mhm.
chili lime stuff. They've got espresso bourbon, and it's all made locally here, and it is actually really, really good. So if you're one of these people, like if I have a bowl of popcorn, I will eat the bowl. It doesn't matter how big the bowl is.
Here's another question I've been asking people. Tell me about your food aversion. What can you absolutely like not swallow?
My grandma made different dishes. Sometimes it was my mom. I was kind of in that awkward space between maybe somebody's home, maybe someone's not
Are
home.
you a latch, almost like a half latchkey?
Maybe you saw your parents. Sometimes it got dark and you'd show up and, oh, hey, did you eat? Well, maybe not. But they would make these stuffed red peppers. And I know a lot of people love them. I didn't like them, especially when I was younger, and I couldn't touch it. And in most things, other than maybe like some really good fajitas, I can't stand the peppers in them.
So is it the cooked? Can you eat bell peppers in a non-cooked format? Is it a texture? Is it a food?
Yeah, so I just generally don't love the flavor. Definitely the texture in a stuffed pepper. As I've matured and grown, been able to kind of work them into, especially being here, I mean, Mexican food is the thing. So
Right.
I'll do fajitas and I'll do some tacos with them. And if there's an option that doesn't have peppers, I'll probably go that way. So
Wait, where were you before Arizona?
I was in LA.
Can we have like a controversial like Mexican food in LA, Mexican food in Arizona moment? I've lived down in Venice and I lived up in Northern California. My take is tacos better here. Oakland tacos over LA tacos, and I'm sure everyone will hate me for saying that. What's your take on Mexican food in the two places?
Yeah, I mean, Mexican food is kind of life here for sure. I think that some of the spots in LA are maybe a little over glamorized, right?
Right? They
And
have
so
good marketing.
very good marketing. It's this LA thing, and maybe they got a celebrity to stop by at one point or not. I tended to find that the really well, written up taco spots maybe weren't the best taco spots in LA. I think the other thing that LA is really good is it has that kind of, I don't know, I guess you'd call it kind of hipster Mexican, right? I would put places like Guisados in that mix. But I love
California Mexican
Guisados.
is what I would call that.
So I worked, my stores were in downtown LA on Broadway, and there was a Guisados there. And they're one of those places. The tortillas are amazing. They make them fresh.
Tortillas are so good there.
And they had the shrimp tacos that do have the red peppers in them, but I would eat the red peppers at Guisados. So that's
So
what I would
it's
say.
situational. So it's a
Yeah,
situational thing.
Tucson is like, this is the birria capital of the world.
I
So
just got into birria recently. Yes. Well, then you're gonna have to name drop. Give me a couple good places to go there.
my favorite here is El Rustico, and it's actually, I mean, everything's fairly small here, so it's probably 10 minutes from my house. Little spot, maybe questionable on the health rating. They do the quesadilla, so you've got the cheese into the shells, great birria, and you can, the
Making me
dip is
so hungry
great.
right
You
now.
get beans and rice with it. Half the time I could just survive on Mexican beans and rice, but you throw a couple of birria tacos in, and
Mm.
that's the spot for me.
I love it. I just want to thank you so much for being here. This has been such a delightful conversation. Where should we find you? And what kind of things should we reach out to you for if we're interested in potentially hiring you from a fractional perspective?
LinkedIn, you can find me easy. It's just Trent Valladares. I think that's probably the best way to get in touch. I've got a little bit of
Slide into
information.
your DMs. Yep.
Yeah, just hit me up there. And I think, as far as the types of things that I guess would be the best things to reach out
Yeah,
on.
what gets you excited?
Ultimately, I'm a brand guy, but I think the operation side means that, I'm looking at the brand all the way down through, every aspect of that. I am an e-com guy, I am a customer service guy because I really want that brand experience all the way down through every part of the organization. So if you got a brand that's looking to maybe reinvent or maybe go into a new market that you haven't been in, and you're trying to look at how to bring that go to market together, how to, kind of build that sphere of kind of credibility, how to go forward, that's kind of a good place for me, as well as just generally managing that whole day to day of where do we need to take the brand? What does that look like? How are we splintering off the budget? The basic stuff, I guess, as well as the white space. And
I
I think
love it. And the advisory, like if somebody just needs, some advisory support, do you do that as well?
yeah, definitely. I'm happy to be involved in that role. I've had some clients where I'm, a couple of hours a week just to make sure that I can kind of keep them on the right track and that they're not making steps that undermine the work that's been done in other areas at other times. Sometimes they can get off track and just look for the shiny thing and they don't realize
Yep.
it's having a problem downstream. Yeah, I think that kind of stuff, branding, go-to-market strategy, e-com, all of that from with an operator kind of I can make happen.
I love it. Well, thank you so much. And thank you everyone for joining us at Career Hacks and Snacks. Go get out and get some violet crumbles and some Mexican food today, because if you got through this conversation without being hungry, I don't even know who you are. So thank you for being here with us and chat soon.
See ya.